Now, they had the auction about a week ago, and I saw you there, and what were your thoughts?
I will tell you my absolute honest thoughts, because there's certainly no point being disingenuous at this point. It killed me. It absolutely killed me. I didn't want to be there. I was assigned by one of my employers, one of the people I write for, which is Blood Horse Magazine, to cover the auction as a journalist. And if I hadn't had that assignment, that's the last place on earth I would have been that day. It was absolutely soul-crushing, and to see things just disappear into the day, into the night. These are, and everyone I spoke to, there were a lot of people there who had been part of the Rockingham family for a long time. I saw people who've been affiliated with the track for over 60 years and over 50 years, 40, 30, 20, whatever you want it to be. Employees who'd worked there for a long time. People who told me they grew up on the backside. You know, it was the Rockingham family, and for all of us former, employees, horsemen, anybody affiliated with the track, we all said we felt the same. It was heartbreaking, it was demoralizing, it was soul-crushing, because we've always felt about the track. One thing about Rockingham Park, it was always a family, and it felt like there were outsiders coming into our house and picking over the corpse. And that's a terrible visual image, but that's what it felt like for us. And these were things that were sacred to us. The track is our home. The track is our family. The track is woven into our souls and our hearts and our minds. And to see these precious, precious, irreplaceable things just walking out the door was very difficult.
Happier moments.
However, may I add that one of the things that I'm really proud about is in kind of my almost my last act for Rockingham Park and for the fans and for the industry and for the sport. Ed very graciously invited me to come and work with him to make sure that many of the more precious memorabilia items were pulled out of the auction and categorized into a separate group to be donated to various museums. So the museums who benefited, we designated appropriate things for each of the different museums. So many of the more special, precious, irreplaceable, one-of-a-kind items are now at the National Thoroughbred Museum of Racing in Saratoga Springs, New York. They're at the Harness Hall of Fame and Museum in Goshen, New York. There's going to be a new exhibit that will be on permanent display at the New Hampshire Historical Society in Concord, which is the State Museum of History. There are things that have gone to the Town of Salem Museum, and things that have been donated specifically for the New England Sports Museum at the Garden in Boston. So I had the distinct pleasure of working with the various curators to determine what should go where, what they wanted, and what will be. So there will be, Rockingham Park will be preserved, thank heaven, for all time in various museums, because the thought of it, there not being museum exhibits, and Rockingham not having an exhibit in each of these museums, and just the memory just fading away into dust, was really beyond our ability to accept, because it would be really a tragedy, in my way of thinking, if somebody went, say, to the New Hampshire Museum of History and there was nothing about Rockingham Park there. I mean, how could that be? Rockingham Park was a vital, integral, hugely enormous part of the history of the state of New Hampshire for 110 years. So there has to be an exhibit in the museum in Concord. How could there not be? And the same is true for all of the other museums. So it was, admittedly, it was a very difficult job because it was an overwhelming job. Just the sheer volume of items to look through and pore over from 110 years of history was physically a big job. I could call myself now, I could add cleaner or housekeeper to my resume, because some of these things were so dirty and dusty that I was literally cleaning off dust that thick on some of the items. So it was overwhelming physically because there was just so much memorabilia. And at the same time, it was overwhelming emotionally when I was sitting in a room personally going through things and having a personal relationship with a lot of this stuff. It was a little tough, but it was an important job, and as I say, I'm very, very grateful that I was allowed to be the person involved with Ed, and that the owners of Rockingham Park recognized that I was somebody who had the ability to recognize what belonged where and love the track enough to have the desire to do it. And I maybe a little self-aggrandizing here, but unfortunately it's kind of sad to say that I'm one of the few people who's left who had the ability and the desire to get that project done. There aren't a lot of people left who, frankly, recognize the importance of a lot of the things that were donated to the museum.